Back into the chamber, scene of a government victory on Brexit last night, and a defeat that destroys his repeated, emphatic promise that Brexit would happen on the 31st of this month.
We're leaving on the 31st of October, no ifs or buts. I'd rather be dead in a ditch. Getting Brexit done on October the 31st. Do or die. Come on, mate.
Boris Johnson was urged not to get hung up on his 31st October deadline, to stick with pushing the bill through Parliament on a timetable agreed across parties.
Will my right honourable friend firstly get over his disappointment and accept that October the 31st is now Halloween? It is devoid of any symbolic or political content and will fade away into historical memory very rapidly.
I think it would still be very much in the best interest of this country and of democracy to get Brexit done by October the 31st. I will wait to see what our EU friends and partners say in response both to the request for a delay from Parliament and also to the insistence by Parliament that they want a delay.
Does the Prime Minister accept that Parliament should have the necessary time to improve on this worse than terrible treaty?
It was a point Jeremy Corbyn had actually been able to make in a rare private meeting between the two men in the Prime Minister's House of Commons office just before question time. Labour had offered talks on how Parliament might deal with withdrawal agreement. The government invited them in. The leaders were accompanied by their top advisers, Seamus Milne for Jeremy Corbyn and Dominic Cummings for Boris Johnson. Party whips and others were there too. After the Prime Minister had made some anti-Labour political points, Labour's chief whip, who was also in the room, said he thought they ought to start talking about what he thought they'd come to discuss, trying to agree a cross-party timetable for withdrawal agreement to get through Parliament. At that point, Dominic Cummings, according to witnesses, slammed his hand down on the table and said no. The Prime Minister then appeared to overrule that attempt to stop the discussion going in that direction and said the two chief whips should go away and discuss exactly that. The former chief whip, now the Northern Ireland Secretary, tried to steer the government away from an early general election, which Dominic Cummings and others are urging on the Prime Minister. Julian Smith had a different message on what the government should do now.
Get a programme motion that is to the satisfaction of a majority of people in this House and resolve this situation. I think that is where I feel our responsibility lies.
Theresa May's former pollster says others will be putting the case to the Prime Minister for an early election.
So certainly at the moment, that argument of get Brexit done so that we can get onto these other issues like the NHS, like crime, like schools, is an incredibly powerful argument. And it opens up for the Conservatives voters that they might not get in a post-Brexit election. Those older working class voters in the North and Midlands who voted Leave, who actually might quite like the Brexit message.
It's a magnet for them.
Indeed, it unlocks them. The big question is what's going to win? What's going to win out in Boris Johnson's mind? The ability to get this deal done quickly, or the temptation to go for an election when the situation in the country is at its best and the most ripe.
Many Labour MPs think Jeremy Corbyn's keen to get Brexit settled fast and point in evidence to the gentle treatment of Labour MPs who voted with Boris Johnson last night. You voted against the front bench line last night, along with some others. Have they come down on you like a ton of bricks? And what does that tell us if they haven't?
I can't speak for other colleagues.
Jeremy Corbyn's got his fingers crossed behind his back and he wants Brexit in the rearview mirror. There's a bit of him that'll be glad you voted the way you did, even though he won't say it in public.
Well, you could suggest that, Gary. I couldn't possibly comment.
Number 10's expecting the European Union to come back to it on Friday with an indication of what kind of delay to Brexit it's willing to offer. After the weekend, in the first part of next week, we could discover whether Boris Johnson intends to continue with his withdrawal agreement through Parliament or try to press the button for an early general election. Gary Gibbon, Channel 4 News, Westminster.